Welcome to Psychocinematic, the podcast where we analyse depictions of mental illness and disability in popular film and TV. Before we start, this podcast is not designed to be therapeutic, prescriptive, or constitute a formal diagnosis for any listener. For a longer version of this disclaimer, please check the episode notes on your podcast app. Please note that this episode contains discussions of suicide. If this episode brings up anything for you, Lifeline is available 24/7 on 1311 and Beyond Blue on 132-4636. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people, traditional custodians of the land on which I record this podcast today, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are listening today. Welcome, Jossie. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Jossie. Would you like to talk a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do with yourself?
Like background stuff. I've just started studying a diploma in counselling.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. So I started that at TAFE, so I'm going to be doing that so I do that full-time online. I'm a full-time psychologist PA, and I'm building our dream home. That build starts this month. I've been doing IVF for 3 years, and I'm about to have weight loss surgery. So
lots going on.
Look, it all happens at once. I guess. Look, let's start off with the shit people are here to hear. I have bipolar disorder type 2, and anxiety and PTSD from IVF. I guess my bipolar, I knew something was wrong like years ago, that I was always different. And then everyone put it down to mood swings from hormones, being a girl. You know, it's always hormones, And then it was just like, oh, no, you're just a moody bitch. Yeah, and then it kind of progressed from there, where I was drinking a lot, but I was also suicidal a lot. So it went from, I guess that's just like straight into it. But I was on a roller coaster, but it wasn't that obvious. Mm-hmm. So the mood swings weren't huge until I was about 22, and I left my long-term boyfriend of 5 years. Then I started dating my ex-girlfriend from high school, and I don't know what triggered in that moment, if it was like I don't know who I am, all that crap, but my mood swings just went wild. 1 minute I was really great, and when I was great, I was fucking on top of the world, and then in 2 weeks I would crash again. And I would say to my friends, like, there seems to be like a rhythm with this, like, you know, it seems to be like a wave. And she was saying, oh, it's probably just, you know, because you're drinking, or I don't know. It was all these reasons, all these other reasons of why. But, yeah, it's because I have bipolar.
And what was that like, the diagnosis process for you? How was that for you?
The diagnosis. So I started seeing a doctor probably when I was 22, 23, saying that something was wrong. Probably, 22, saying that going to the doctor asking for help, and they kept diagnosing me with depression. And I just kept saying, like, I don't have depression, but they just kept chucking these pills at me over and over and over.
And were they just, like, different types of antidepressants?
Yeah. And because I've got bipolar, the antidepressants triggered my mood swings further. Right. So that's when I turned suicidal from having these antidepressants. So, which I didn't realise at the time as that's why it was happening. But, and that went on for years. And just no one would take me seriously because I was well-dressed, well-spoken, you know, like, I don't know what they were expecting me to look like, but not who I am. It wasn't that. It was I needed to go in looking disheveled to be taken seriously as something's wrong.
That's such a common story that I've heard, and it feels like the system that we're in, it's like you really have to be at crisis point in order for anyone to actually go, okay, so maybe something's going on here.
Yeah, like I
really
needed
sucks.
to be at the reception, like just losing my shit or something. Like it just nothing. No one would take me seriously as to anything else but having depression.
So it sounds like it was a pretty difficult process to actually get that final diagnosis.
Yeah, so I've been like through that stage. I went for years until I think I was 27. So about 5 years of going to doctors continuously saying something is wrong. And then when I started, I thought, well, fuck, no one's listening to me. No one thinks I know anything. Everyone thinks I'm too well dressed and too well educated, which I'm not, to be taken seriously, that it's not depression. So why don't I just use that in my favour and actually become educated? And then I can take myself fully armed and go, look, these are the symptoms, I guess, that I have. I've been tracking my moods. This is what I think it is. This is why I think I have bipolar. And I need you to fucking listen to me, because whatever you've given me, this concoction of fucking pills, like I'm overdosing on them. Like this is what you've done. You've made me suicidal. Like you've done that because you weren't listening to me. And then I got a psychiatrist, and she looks just like a Simpsons character. It was just wild. Like I couldn't believe it. Was really hard to take her seriously. And yeah, within 10 minutes she was like, oh yeah, you have bipolar. And I text what bipolar is to a stack of my friends. And I said, do you think this sounds like me? And every single one was like, oh, holy shit, did you write that about yourself?
Oh, wow. That's very validating.
Yeah, exactly. So on one hand, when you get the diagnosis, you're like, oh, fuck, like that's quite scary. Like something else is wrong with me. And it's a complex mental illness. It's not something that's so easily fixed or there's no Band-Aid solution for bipolar.
Yeah, there's no cure.
Yeah. And it's not common, and it's so fucking, like, it's just so hard to explain to people. But on the other hand, I was like, I belong somewhere. I have a little community now of people that understand me if I join Facebook groups or Instagram pages and stuff. So that, it was really reassuring that, one, it wasn't in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't making shit up. And the other biggest thing for me was I'm not a bitch. I'm not a bad person.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing for me was I'm not a bad person, because I beaten myself up for so long because the agitation that I would feel. Like my ex-girlfriend would wear, this is the stupidest thing ever, but she'd wear shapewear that wasn't even shapewear. Anyways, she'd wear it every day to work. And I just remember getting so agitated one day. I was like, they don't even fucking work. Like, it's just high underwear. Stop calling it shapewear. Which is the most irrational thing to get angry about. But I was that agitated. And I just thought, I'm just the worst person. Just, why would that make me so angry? But it's just these wild mood swings.
So it sounds like you really had to, like, learn for yourself and advocate for yourself to get the diagnosis and to be able to put a name to what was going on for you, and then get the support that you actually need that's actually going to help you. And it's unfortunate not everyone can already sort of be on the ball about it and go, oh yeah, I think this is what it is. I'm going to take this information to my doctor or whatever. So good on you for having to go through all of that to get to that.
Yeah, I've got really, like, I'm very fortunate in that I could afford to ask for help. I had the access to ask for help, but I also had, like, the support of my parents really backing me when I was saying to them, like, something's wrong. I could call them at any time and get that support or just that confidence to back myself when talking to someone, which honestly had made the world of difference. So I do not understand how anyone can back themselves or advocate for themselves for anything like that without some support behind them, because it is scary. You're going against these people with massive degrees and they're like, no, you're wrong. And you're just this little fucking number.
And I'm always assuming that it's a little bit of I don't know. I think it sort of comes back a little bit to in history of like the hysterical woman as well. I feel like women aren't taken seriously ever. Like, you know, look at things like endometriosis and all that sort of stuff, PMDD. It's such a common theme where it's just, no, you're just a woman. You just, you know, you just need to calm down and get on with it.
And that's right. Like, I just thought I was moody. I thought I was a moody fucking woman. And the hate I had on myself for being that downer was just awful. Yeah, it was really crushing my self-esteem when I thought, everyone hates me. I'm an awful person. Like, why would I say that? Why would I feel like that?
And now you've kind of got a reason for that.
Yeah.
The reason why I brought you on the podcast today as well is because you were one of my first listeners, to be honest. And you recommended to me a movie way back like last year, and it was Touch with Fire. And I finally got the chance to watch it because it was on SBS On Demand for a very, very short period of time, and thought how better to cover it than with yourself. So thank you so much for offering to do that with me.
Thanks for having me. This is super special.
So how did you come across this movie?
I think it was my parents.
Oh, cool.
So my dad is in media and he absolutely loves movies. Like, he's a film critic as well.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sent it to me saying, I can't even remember now because it was years ago. And then they bought me the DVD, but I don't have a DVD player.
Who does these days, though?
Fuck, not me. But yeah, and then I watched it and I was like, holy shit. This is like nothing I have seen before.
I felt the same way when I watched it. I was like, yeah, I can't think of a movie that's as similar as this one.
Yeah, and it's so confronting, but they do it in such a and I don't know, it took my breath away. The way that they did it, though, was so beautiful that it still kept you really enthralled in it. Like, you wanted to know what was happening next, but it wasn't too confronting that you're like, oh fuck, turn that off. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there is that fine line of like, oh, this is a bit much, but it was just brilliant.
It was a real balance. I think it was really well made. And I'll just say now, it came out in 2015 and it was directed and written by Paul Dalio. I think that's how you say his name. Who knows? And it was co-produced by his wife, Christina Nikolova, which I love. Love a husband-wife team. Obviously, it wasn't a blockbuster. It wasn't a Hollywood film. So honestly, I didn't even know about it until you told me about it. And I just happened to see that it was on SBS and I was like, ooh. So...
How did they afford Katie Holmes?
Well, I think I was just thinking that because, you know, one thing I would have liked is more like actual actors with bipolar in it. But then you got Katie Holmes. Get Katie Holmes in there to, you know, get some star power. So
yeah.
Shall I go through the plot so we can get stuck into the nitty-gritty? So Touch with Fire. We meet Carla and Marco, who are both experiencing a manic stage of bipolar disorder. Marco's dad discovers him living in squalor with piles of books and papers everywhere, talking about how he's quit his job because he's through with the system and he can live off McDonald's packet sauces. He doesn't need electricity or sleep anymore, and he tells his dad he isn't taking medication as they constrict his emotions. He's a beat poet who calls himself Luna. It seems that his mother also had mental illness and left the family. Marco escapes his dad but gets picked up by the cops while on a roof staring at the moon and is taken to the institution that we see in the film. We then meet Carla, who's riding in the middle of the night and appears to be getting more and more distressed. She's staring at the light and seems to be fixated on the sun. She goes to her parents' place at around 1 a.m. and talks with her mum, desperate to find out what she was like before graduation when she got sick and what triggered it. Unsatisfied, she accuses her mum of lying. She tells her mum she doesn't feel like herself anymore, who tries to convince her to stay at theirs, and then they'll get her file from the institution and figure it all out. Carla leaves, goes straight to the hospital to try and get her file. The psychiatrist agrees to give it to her, but then she is convinced to stay there so she can keep looking at her file. So Carla and Marco both appear to have inadvertently checked themselves into the psych ward. In group therapy, they don't like each other and have a disagreement. Their big difference seems to be that Carla wants to be able to manage her illness, whereas Marco wants to stay in the manic state and channel it into his life and creativity. Then at night, they start meeting up together at around 3 a.m. and get to know each other more and more, discovering they both channel their manic periods into art, both as poets. She sees herself as the sun, he sees himself as the moon, both drawn in by light. He's quite obsessed with the book Touched with Fire, which talks about all the famous geniuses with bipolar and how they harness their bipolar in creative ways. They fall in love. They both go off their medication and start to believe they're an alien and arrange to go to their home planet. After attempting to do this by drugging the guard and then escaping, they are separated and put into isolation, and are then discouraged from being together. They both go into a depression and are sent home, and for the 6 months they stay at their parents'. They both attempt suicide around the same time. Well, I assume so. That's what it looked like in the movie. Saying to each other, meet me on the other side. Later, while stable, they try and find each other by sending each other clues in the institution. They find each other at Van Gogh's Starry Night at the Mona and start a relationship. They try to be intimate, but Marco struggles due to the side effects of his medications. They throw their meds away in a fountain and decide to be together, which helps their sex life, but of course they stop engaging in the rest of the world. Their parents are very wary of their courtship and don't think it's healthy and try to arrange doctors to take them back to the institution. They run away, find out that Carla is pregnant, and so steal Carla's mum's car and go to the forest where they believe they can raise their child. They drive into a river and are then rescued and put back in the ward, but are released when it's discovered that Carla is pregnant. They agree to go back on medication and raise the child together in the world. They start setting up an apartment and he goes back to work, but he can't maintain it and starts to go off his medication, and Carla can see he's starting to get into a manic phase again. They meet the author of Touch with Fire and talk about their worries, but she's very pro-medication and says she can keep your gift while being on meds. This gives Carla hope, but Marco says that she's weak, and they have a fight and Marco pushes her. Carla goes and gets an abortion, and you know this because you see that she's been drinking. He also finds out and pulls a manipulative, let's have a baby shower, and buys her the little prince, which is like such a sad scene. She admits what happened. She didn't want the child to be raised by their illness, and they break up. Later, she calls him, and then a year later, it's discovered that they wrote a book together. She's in a new relationship, and they're both stable. They do a reading at the bookshop, which goes well. Their book is called Eclipse, Sun and Moon Together. Oh my God. And that's the plot.
And just for those listeners who hadn't already heard from our last episode, I'll just explain the difference between bipolar 1, 2, and cyclothymic disorder. Bipolar 1 disorder is a manic depressive disorder that can exist both with and without psychotic episodes. Bipolar 2 disorder consists of depressive and manic episodes which alternate and are typically less severe and do not markedly inhibit function. Cyclothymic disorder is a cyclic disorder that causes brief episodes of hypomania and depression. And to be considered mania, the elevated, expansive, or irritable mood must last for at least 1 week and be present most of the day, nearly every day. Whereas hypomania, which is more common with bipolar 2 disorder, the mood must last at least 4 consecutive days and be present most of the day, almost every day. So that's the kind of difference between mania and hypomania. Mania is characterized by inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, decreased need for sleep, increased talkativeness, racing thoughts, being distracted easily, an increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation, and engaging in activities that could have painful consequences. And then, of course, the depressive side of bipolar disorder is characterized by a major depressive episode. We've already discussed depression quite a bit on the podcast, but obviously depressed mood most of the day is a characteristic, loss of interest or pleasure, significant weight loss or gain, fatigue or loss of energy, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, and recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal ideation, or a suicide attempt.
Look, there's just so much about, like, the movie that, I don't know, like, I really resonate with. That Marco's, like, living in squalor, like, as a hoarder, and he's got all this shit everywhere. I know that when I was in Newfoundland, when I was living there single, and that's when the bipolar, I was probably in my 4th year of having bipolar without knowing it, well, technically. I didn't even have sheets on my bed. I slept amongst clothes that would have been so dirty. My washing machine didn't work. I didn't care. I would buy new clothes or wear dirty clothes. Like, this it looks dramatic, but it's real. I lived off Macca's for a year. Like, he lives off McDonald's packet sauce. That's because he's not working. He can't afford food. And also, like, he doesn't feel the need to eat, which was the same as myself. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. And I just lived in this absolute squalor of a mess. I didn't even I owned one towel, like, everything about it. I'm like, yes. Like, this is actually really showing the really ugly side of this disease. Like, it's really showing these things that are fucking real life.
And there's not many films that really do that in a way that's not, like, overly dramatic and, like, for shock value. Like, we just did Silver Linings Playbook, and it's, like, not even... It's such a dumbed-down Hollywood version of it. Like, you can't imagine them actually showing this sort of stuff. Like, there's the aggression side in that movie, which is a little less so in this one. But that sort of thing, like what you're describing, it's like, yeah, there's not many movies that do that.
I really wanted to love that movie, The Silver Linings, but none of it I connected with. And I know that everyone's obviously so different in how they feel, but none of it.
Yeah. And a lot of people really like it and connected with it, but it's validating to hear that you didn't connect with it, because I was like, I don't know if I had bipolar that I would like this movie very much. So
yeah, it was awful. I think, are they connecting with the movie or are they connecting with the main actor?
Yeah, good point.
Are you just romanticizing what has happened because he's fucking hot?
That's a fair call. And that's another good thing in this movie. I think, like Cody Holmes is very good looking, and I think Luke Kirby's also very good looking, but they're not dressed. They don't really wear makeup. You know, they're not made to look really sexy. They look pretty, you know, rough around the edges, which is kind of nice as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they haven't tried to make it fancy. It's just really raw.
Having said that, I really love the Starry Night scenes, how they made it look like they're in this magical universe. I saw that. That looks amazing. Jossie's just showing her, stubby cooler that has Starry Night on it. It's gorgeous.
And the tattoo.
Nice. Oh, you've got a tattoo of it as well. That's amazing.
Yeah. That scenery of the shot where they're in the Mona Museum and then they've got that Starry Night. It's just beautiful.
Lived experience? I might talk about the Filmmaker for a little bit. So Paul Dalio was the writer and director, and he's someone who has bipolar disorder, and so he's been stable. He reckons with treatment he's been stable for several years, but he struggled with the condition when he went through film school in New York. And once he graduated, he wanted to film a story. So he and his wife, who's also a filmmaker, started sort of throwing ideas back and forth about two people with mental illness who fell in love, which made him sort of explore what it's like to be bipolar and that it's not all bad. And he looks at like a long list of writers, painters and composers who had bipolar but still created amazing things despite or possibly because of bipolar disorder. So he wanted to sort of show that it brings out a lot of beauty and positive things, but it also brings out a lot of the horror as well. So yeah, he had the focus on bipolar in this film, and I think that's really clear in it as well. Like that's what he set out to do. And compared to Silver Linings Playbook, because my brain's still in there, it's like such a different. You can see the difference.
It's chalk and cheese. Like Silver Linings Playbook is utter fucking shit. If you haven't seen it, don't give them any more fucking money. It's not even like so bad it's good. It's just so bad.
As we sort of discussed in that episode, like maybe it did some good things, but like it's done with the good things it's done, and there's really no I think we need to focus more on the films that are actually, you know, showing it in a much better way. So also I've sort of gone through the actors in it and whether they have lived experience. And you'll not be surprised to find that neither of them have lived experience with bipolar.
Shocked.
So yeah, it would have been nice if he had people with bipolar in the role, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been that hard to find, but I guess there's still so much stigma attached to mental illness, so it's not like actors that are like, hey, I've got this and I've got that. It's still very much a taboo subject, so that's fair. But it's interesting. Katie Holmes said she didn't know anything about bipolar before agreeing to play the part. And keep in mind too, because she was married to Tom Cruise for so many years and she had to like be a Scientologist, and they don't believe in like psychiatry. So maybe she wasn't even allowed to even think about mental illness when she was with him.
No, it would have been a complete, like, it would have been a non-topic in their house.
Yeah, so it kind of makes sense that she's not really heard of bipolar. And at least, you know, even though she came from that background, at least now she does know what bipolar is about, and she's got a little bit more interested in mental illness as a whole, because it did make her do lots of research, and she read Touch with Fire, as did Luke Kirby. But yeah, I couldn't find anything else about mental illness for her at all, probably for that reason again. But I'm glad she divorced Tom Cruise. She can, if she has mental illness, she's allowed to talk about it.
She did something good for her mental health then when she divorced him.
Luke Kirby also does not have anything that I came up with or that I could find, but he did say that he thought that mental illness has a dodgy history of cinematic portrayals, and he was keen to make this movie to change that. And it sounded like both he and Katie were like very trusting of Paul Dalio, the director, when doing this, and like going with what he said, and counting on him to make it all come together, which obviously worked really well, I think. And he has played characters with bipolar before in plays that he's done, so a little bit more aware than Katie Holmes, which is nice.
That's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it, that he's played someone with like roles with bipolar before?
Yeah.
What's the odds of that?
I don't know, and I don't know how he came across the film, whether he might have auditioned thinking, hey, I can play this role. So that's all I know.
I really liked Luke Kirby in the role. Really. Like, when you would see him have these, like when he's in his apartment and he's rifling through everything and talking to his dad, like you see in his eyes, like you just, everything about, he's just so unwell.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't look fake. Like he does so well that
and
he
really looks quite disheveled. His eyes look really like bags under his eyes.
Yeah, the bags under his eyes, like you can just see he's just not there. Like it's incredible. He's really good. Yeah,
he should be in more things. I hadn't come across him before. Have you seen anything else he's in?
No, I googled the guy because I was like, who the fuck is this? And I have no idea what, like, these other movies, no idea.
Christine Lardy, who played Carla's mum, I've seen her in like Chicago Hope from back in the day, which was one of those hospital dramas.
Like an ER?
Yeah, like ER. I think it was like the other ER show. And she actually had a sister who struggled with severe bipolar disorder who unfortunately took her own life. So she definitely has had that experience of what it's what it's like to support someone with bipolar. So she took that into the role, which would have been very difficult for her.
Yeah,
I would say.
That's what I'm just thinking. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Because how triggering that would have been, playing the loved one again to someone with bipolar.
I think it's a mark of a really good actress too, to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And I thought she was really good as well.
Yeah, she was brilliant. She was really good.
And I'll just touch on Kay Redfield Jamison, who appeared in the film, who is the author of the book Touch with Fire. So she turns up in the scene where they meet with her and talk about her book and what they want to get as much out of life and don't want to be on the medication, and she sort of convinces them that you can get that from life as well as be on the medication. And yeah, I just read a little bit about her. Had you come across her before or her books at all?
No, I don't. I used to read a little bit, but I don't read because I just can't sit still.
Yeah, so she's written so many books. She's the Dalio, I don't know if that's related to Paul Dalio, but the professor in mood disorders and psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. And she's written her book Manic Depressive Illness was first published in 1990, and it's like a classic textbook on bipolar disorder. But it sounds like she only got diagnosed with bipolar after that, when like she was really interested in mood disorders when she studied, and about 3 months into her first job as a professor in UCLA, that's when she realized that she was bipolar, and she was put on lithium, which helped control her moods. She wasn't keen on it at first because it impaired her motor skills, but then she decided to continue taking it after a period of depression. Yeah, and she's written heaps of books. An Unquiet Mind, which talks about her experience with mania and depression. Night Falls Fast, Understanding Suicide, which would be a really interesting read.
I'd like to read that.
Yeah, I think people should read that book. The government, maybe. And Nothing Was the Same, which was a memoir with her about her and her husband's relationship. And she's like very influential and very smart, and it's amazing that she was in the film, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just seen here as well that she's also attempted suicide by overdosing on lithium, which I have done, I think, probably 5-6 times.
Oh, wow.
I've overdosed on lithium. So it's just so interesting, like reading someone else doing it.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, I did that. Like, okay, cool. I don't know, yeah.
And I guess I wonder how common that is too, given it's not someone people talk about that often, and that those medications can be quite potent as well, and there is the danger of doing something along those lines.
And then the Seroquel and the antidepressants, like all of them I've overdosed on. So I just thought that was really interesting that she has as well.
That's all that I looked up. Did you find anything else?
It's just such a good film. Like, the chemistry that these two characters have, the genuine love they have for each other.
Yeah, they really connected really well.
So well. And I know that I don't have children, but I know that everyone says, you can't describe the love you have for a child. The only thing I could compare it to is when you're so manic, and you're manic for an extended period of time, and you're dating someone that you love. Like, I know my last relationship, well, not last one, but years ago anyway, it was super toxic. But because I was so manic, those emotions were felt so much deeper. The love was so much deeper, but the hate was so much deeper. Like,
yeah.
And you can see it with these two as well, as much as they want to be together, and then they are, but that when when they're going through those bad times together, it is just so full on.
So everything that the love is so extreme, but then anything that doesn't work out is also similarly extreme.
It is so extreme. And I know that I've been like a bit sheltered in what people might tell me sometimes. Like, if it's bad news about someone, they might make sure that they're with me when they tell me, because they know that, I've been called sensitive and stuff. But it's just like, I have a literal fucking mood disorder. So if I take it a little bit more than someone else does, sorry that my brain's not configured the same as yours. Like,
it's kind of the definition of it.
Yes.
Your moods felt a little bit stronger than everybody else's. So that makes sense.
Like, even when she's writing, like when Carla was writing in her book, her poem, and you can just see how manic she's writing. Like, I know
she's really pressed onto the page.
Yeah, and then she just this like spiral where she just loses it, and you can feel it. Like, for myself, I can just feel her just losing it and just being so passionate that she's got to express it somehow. And I know writing my notes, I'm normally a really neat writer, but I know even just myself, I was just like scribbling writing because I was
that looks so fucking neat to me, Jossie.
No, fuck off. Look at it, it's a fucking mess. I feel like I was there with her, and I was just like, even when I was scribbling stuff out, when I was like, oh no, that's fucked up, and then I'd just be, and then I'd be
so you're kind of feeling her emotions as you're
and I was taking it in, like I was a sponge to it. It was incredible.
I want to talk about like the accuracy of the depiction, and I've got, the DSM and all of that sort of stuff, but I want to know what you thought about. I think we already kind of know that you liked the depiction, but what in the performances really showed that it was a pretty accurate depiction of bipolar for you?
Definitely the passion on both sides of,
yeah,
and the speed in which they work. Like Katie just opening her mum's door and just being like, boom, in. And she wants to talk about this and she needs to talk about it right now. Yeah. And there is no later. In her head, it is now. And she has to do it. And she cannot understand why someone else would say, it's 1 a.m. Like, what are you doing? To her, I don't care what fucking time it is. I'm awake and I need to do this now. Like, that's so spot on.
Is that kind of what happens in a manic episode for you? That need for it to be now? Or is that sort of every now and then, like not just manic?
It's definitely the manic episode. So I'll get something in my head. Oh, God, it could be anything, but I'll have to do it there and then. And I know so many times my partner will be like, oh, just wait. Wait till we're out of the car. Like, I might be in the passenger seat and I'll say, I need to call blah, blah, blah. And he'll say, just wait. I'm like, no, I need to do it now. But I cannot wait. It's not that I won't or that I'm super impatient. It's just, I don't know, my brain is like,
it's just not going to happen.
And then, the not sleeping, like, I went days without sleep, like nothing at all. I was living in New Farm off Brunswick Street, so I would just run to the Story Bridge and just sit there because I had to let off some energy, but also unfit. And it could be 3 a.m. and I could sit there for an hour. But to me, I was kind of sitting there with the spirits that were at the Story Bridge, and that was my way of like calming myself. To everyone else who had lost their life to bipolar or depression or schizophrenia, whatever it may be, but I felt their presence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was something that I did when I was manic, is just couldn't sleep, so I would go for a run up to the Story Bridge, come back, go for a run again somewhere else. Not far because unfit, but just no need for sleep at all, but so energetic.
I feel like in the film too, you could see that energy too for the both of them. Like, it's not just you can't sleep, it's just that you can do all these things without sleep as well. Like, the energy doesn't stop.
It just makes you feel like a superhero. Like, because I drank so much to cover the bipolar moods that I was having, I know that years ago I fell down at the beat in the nightclub in the Valley, and I fell down the entire staircase, which is huge.
That's a tall staircase.
Yeah, it's massive. And I fell down the entire thing in heels, and I got straight back up and I was fine because nothing could faze me. Yeah.
It is pretty incredible what you can achieve.
Yeah.
But not necessarily for the better.
No. Oh, fuck. That was awful. But yeah, it's crazy what you can do if you just, I don't know, if you think you can, because I just got up and I was like, I'm fine, and I just wanted to keep partying.
And did you later on find out that, I actually have broken my ankle or anything like that?
I didn't break anything, nothing.
Amazing.
I had bruises, wasn't even sore.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can do anything. Like him sitting on the roof, going to that height with no concern at all, like getting arrested.
Yeah, and even when the police were there, he was just like, yep. No, this is cool.
Yeah. So he just, I completely understand everything that they're saying. Like,
I was curious what you thought, because the psychiatrist was sort of saying that they were making themselves manic, like they were upping their mania together. What did you think about that?
I honestly think it would be accurate I know for myself, if I was dating someone with bipolar as well, even just me with my friends, like, because I'm so extroverted, my mood goes up so quickly as soon as I'm with people. My speed is like I talk a lot quicker, a lot louder, because that's energizing me. I can only imagine, not that I hope I ever meet anyone else with bipolar and be that close, but it would be this electricity between two people, and you would just be shooting off between each other because you just take on other people's energies. So 100%.
You absorb that energy and that emotion.
They're down. You take that on. Like because you feel everything so much more than the average person, you really do absorb that. So 100%.
It was pretty magnetic watching them connect so much and like she was kind of sus about I think he says, I'm actually from the moon. I'm an alien from the moon. And she at first was like, yeah, no. And then suddenly like, yeah, we're both aliens and they're waiting to go home. Like the way it goes from, yeah, no to immediate, like very quickly into his sort of almost delusion or hallucination was pretty incredible. So that sort of resonated.
Yeah, and like I can see why people think that bipolar is happy or sad because, you do just quickly, like you could just be feeling super average and then something will just happen and it can trigger it off. So for her, she was obviously thinking, no, that's not logical. You're not from the moon. But then the more she felt that trust in him, that she started to believe what he was saying, and then the more she thought about it, she's like, of course you're from the moon. You wouldn't lie to me. You're from the moon. Let's go to the moon. Like, that's where her head was going. It just makes complete sense.
And I guess that's an example of the racing thoughts and ideas that they were both sort of having.
And it's just so trusting. Like when I first met Chris, he told me that seagulls are baby pelicans. And I was like, oh my God, like I had no idea. But you build that trust with someone, and I don't know if it's like it's a survival mode thing where you build trust in someone else that's so stable when you aren't. But that trust is so strong that I believe that for years. For years I thought seagulls are baby pelicans.
If I didn't know better, I would have believed you right now because I've never thought about it. But I guess it makes sense too in being in that state. If it's your reality and your truth, and if that's what the person you're really trusting is saying, and that's enhanced as well, then it's like no one can change my view. That's the truth.
Yeah, it's scary though because I think so many people with bipolar would be quite vulnerable for DV relationships because that trust is so strong.
And I feel like you kind of see that towards when he's going into that manic state and she's taking her meds and she's sort of stable. And is it then he pushes her and like she's like, nah, getting the abortion, we're done. Yeah. Whereas if she was also in that manic state, maybe that's not the decision she might have made.
I don't think she would have made that same decision if she was in a manic state too. Yeah. Because there is no rational thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's completely out the window.
That's a really good point. It would be, hard to not be vulnerable in that state.
Oh, extremely. Yeah. Yeah. Because I know when I, again, like years ago, I made my ex-partner promise that she wouldn't tell anyone that I was this sick or suicidal and just keep it between us. And I thought, and she thought she was doing the right thing. So we moved to the Gold Coast to be further away from people so they wouldn't see how unwell I was. And I had that trust in her that she was doing the right thing for us. And she thought she was. But it absolutely wasn't the right thing. But it's that deep connection with someone of going, okay, well, whatever they say is the right thing, I'm going to do that now.
Put all my trust in you.
Yeah.
Because you're my rock.
Yeah, you become so dependent on that person when you're that ill. So I can see how they're going back and forth needing each other. And the parents are like, you need to separate, but they can't. It's not that they won't. They just cannot.
It's very that codependent sort of relationship. They need each other. Yeah. Which would be so hard to navigate, which I like about how at the end of the film, she's in a relationship. So I feel like the message in the film isn't, oh, bipolar people, can't be in relationships because of these reasons, because, they obviously can, but it's something you really have to manage, obviously.
Yeah, and I think, like, their depiction of, being not wanting to be on medication as well is quite accurate. I know that when I started, I had Seroquel, I had lithium, Lithium I had to do monthly blood tests for, and that was frustrating,
really?
time-consuming.
See, no one tells you about that side of it.
I wasn't allowed to take Nurofen when I was on lithium because of my kidneys. Yeah, so there was all these rules about lithium, and I got frustrated with that, and it wasn't working. And then I tried Seroquel, but that made me a zombie. I couldn't feel anything. I went from feeling everything, like I was at Disneyland, and then I went to I couldn't do anything but slept.
So that's not really functional in the end.
It's not, yeah. And so for them to not want to be on the medication so they can have those feelings and the emotions, I totally get it, because it took me years and a seesaw of, okay, this is working. It's been about 8 months. It's not working anymore. I need to try something else. And it is that constant seesaw with bipolar to get it right.
To get the balance right.
And it's frustrating, and it feels super degrading to yourself when you're just like, for fuck's sake, I just want to feel like me again. So when they're saying that they don't know who they are or they don't know how they're feeling, I totally resonate with that.
I really like the line when Katie comes to her mum and says, I don't know who I am.
Oh, that made me I burst.
When I've been in I'm quite an anxious person. I've got generalized anxiety disorder with, some OCD traits. When I've been in that really peak panic attack mode, that's how I feel, like completely disconnected from myself. I don't know who I am. So that resonated with me in that context. But it's also, it's sort of, she's got a bit more of that insight into knowing I'm in this manic state because I'm kind of losing touch with who I am. But also he's trying to figure out who he is almost without the mania and struggling to let go of that part of it as well. So it's such a big impact on who you see yourself as a person, it seems.
Oh, it's huge. Like, I know I'm really big on when there's a situation like an argument or a disagreement or whatever it may be, that I pride myself on thinking that I can remove myself from the situation and kind of see as a third person. But I also compare that to when you've got bipolar, it's kind of like you're watching on. So you're watching on this other personality do all this shit, do all this destructive crap, and then you're out of that mania or you're out of that depression and you're just like, the fuck have I done? But you can't stop it.
Yeah. It's kind of like a rolling snowball.
Yeah. It's like getting Indiana Jones. Like, it's just, but you don't know who you are. And another huge thing for me, having bipolar, is a lot of the times where I cry over something or something frustrates me, I just think, is that me or is that bipolar?
Can that sometimes be invalidating as well? Like, have you ever experienced a reaction from something and had someone else say, oh, I'll just ignore that because that's just your bipolar, but you are feeling those feelings and they're valid?
But it is really hard. Like, I don't know a single person who doesn't know I have bipolar. But even so, anything, just the most mundane thing can make me really upset. And I do think, is this valid? Is my emotion right now valid? And then in my head, I think, well, put it on a scale of, would, I don't know, someone down the street have the same emotion, have the same reaction? And I'm like, well, no, they wouldn't. But then I have to come back and go, well, that's okay.
You're in danger of sort of shaming yourself at the same time for having the reaction.
I shame myself every time I cry, or because I can't do confrontation. So anytime anyone has this confrontation with me, I cry. And it's not because I'm an idiot and I can't speak back. It's because I don't know what to say. And then I'm in my head. And then it's just...
Yeah.
It's just...
Plus you're just feeling it a lot more than...
Yeah.
Average Joe down the street. What did you think about the depressive period in the film, how that was depicted?
Yeah, beautifully and accurate. It's hard. Like, I know for myself, I was self-destructive, I was suicidal, I attempted suicide many, many times. I used to, run towards the brick wall in a house was a brick house, and I would run up to it, smack my head against the brick wall until I was just bleeding over and over, and I would just be screaming, let me die. Just let me die.
Fuck.
So I get where there's this desperation that they cannot do it anymore, and it's confusing and it's tiring because it's fucking exhausting because you're just whoop, 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 like constantly. So that depressive stage.
Take a lot out of you.
Yeah, and then to be in hospital as well. Like to feel like an outsider in your own body and to not know what's going to happen next. You've really got to let
and sort of be at the mercy of the hospital as well.
Yeah. Like it's not your home. It's not your sanctuary. It's not your comfort zone to let yourself go. You're in, a room full of strangers and you've been so vulnerable in front of them. So, it's just everything about this movie really hits hard. Like it's just beautiful, but it's so accurate. It's so well presented of how bipolar is, and it's not a simple mental illness or one size fits all kind of thing. Like it is just so hard.
Did you think that the institution was, from your experience, an accurate depiction? And I know it's in America, so we have to take that with that caveat as well.
I didn't think America had a great health system.
I thought that too, because I thought the institution looked pretty schmick,
yeah,
to be honest.
And Marco wouldn't have been able to afford that.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And I thought it was really well resourced, like the room that they go in with all the sensory stuff and the art. I just thought, this is a very...
it signed me up.
Well looked after. Yeah.
I'll go to it.
Yeah. Have you had experiences with institutions or mental, wards of hospitals in the same sort of manner?
I've been to Belmont Private Hospital only to visit a friend a couple of times. She was in the postnatal depression ward, but from what she said when I would sit and talk to her, it was nothing like there's the support's there, sure, but it's very generalised. It's nothing like you would see in this film. So that I know that I should have been hospitalised many, many times, but I wasn't. So I can't really compare with that. But I think of all the things, that would have been the glamorised part.
Yeah, I would agree. I've only ever been in New Farm Clinic, also to visit a friend, and that's a private hospital. I think Belmont's the same, isn't it? It's private. And yeah, same. I didn't get the same sense of the lushness, really, and just it just had a different vibe from what we are presented in the movie.
Yeah, and I think the psychiatrist as well, she seems really like Stonewalled. She doesn't seem to actually care, and I feel, does she even believe them, or does she feel that they're just making shit up? Because she's very dismissive of them straight off the bat. She is, yeah. I kind of got the sense that she's been through this a million trillion times and she's seen it all before and she knows exactly what to say. Like she kind of knew what to say to get them to stay, and that worked. Obviously it worked, but it wasn't done with a lot of compassion, I thought. My only thoughts on that are you've got to be quite, considerate with this, because people with bipolar are watching this. So with everything else so accurate, you really want to make that accurate. Like this is the person that you're going to go to for help. You want them to be seen as wanting to help you. Yeah. Not, fuck off. Like you're, not this again. Yeah. It's like, you're ruining my night. Yeah. It's a regular night of viewing for me. But because she does seem so dismissive and just... Ugh. She was probably my least favourite part for that reason as well. And maybe that was Paul Dalio's experience as well. It would have to come from lived experience, I think. And I think it's a grudge that he's got perhaps with someone that he used to see. Because otherwise you would have made that character quite compassionate. Yeah, you'd hope so. Because you're hoping... To me, at the end, they're managing their symptoms a little better. So you'd want to maybe encourage your audience to go, hey, psychiatrists aren't all quacks and they're not all They're not scary. Like,
over
I
you.
can go see them. They're approachable.
Having said that, though, I like the group therapist in the group therapy scene. I think he did an okay job. What were your, have you ever been in group therapy? Can you compare with your own experiences?
I haven't been in group therapy, and I can't even remember what the group therapist was like. So that's how memorable it was for me.
It wasn't a very long scene, but like it's when Carla and Marco meet each other, so they're having a little bit of a fight across the room. My first thought was like, he's actually doing some therapeutic work, whereas any group therapy scene I've seen in movies, they're always just like, how are you going? Like they're never really doing anything therapeutic. But he seemed to be like asking a little bit and asking kind of those leading therapy questions, which I've definitely asked. So I thought that was a pretty good depiction. And he was very like calm and like validating of people's feelings, but also like, okay, you need to calm down. Sort of, yeah, I liked his approach, but that's coming from my perspective.
No, but that's really interesting because you are the psychologist. So you do have that experience. Like I can tell you my lived experience with bipolar until the cows come home, but you can tell me your lived experience as a psychologist on the other side.
Having said that, I have not done group therapy with patients with bipolar, so I'm only coming at it from what I see as like what I think might be cats.
Good. You don't want to.
And that's kind of, he did well at managing all the different personalities in the room with, you know, in as much as he could.
And that, that wouldn't be easy.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I was curious about in your experience, the psychiatrist says since they've been so high and manic for so long, so intensely, the depression will be very, very intense as well. Is that the experience usually for you?
Yeah, well, it's that old saying, what goes up must come down. You go up hard and you come down hard. I know when I described previously what mania was like to a friend, they said, oh, that's just like being on coke. And I've never done coke because I don't need to. But I was like, oh, okay. And then they said, oh, but at least you don't have the come down. And I was like, what's the come down? And it is that depressive state of being. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have that, but times 100, mate. Like, you go nothing. Like, you wait until you're punching yourself in the head. Like, come back and talk to me then about depressive episodes.
Yeah, it's maybe not the most nuanced thing to say. Like, oh, you don't get the come down from coke. No, you get a whole different type of come down.
Yeah, no, I get the much worse one. But thank you so much. Yeah.
I did wonder though, because it seems like in the movie they get sent home during their depressive state, which I thought, isn't that the most high risk to do that? Like, I'm assuming in Australia that's not what would happen. That's when you would be hospitalised.
You'd hope not. But it's who knows these days. But yeah, like they're known to suicide attempts. Like, so why would they be let to go home just to their own devices?
It doesn't make any sense to me. It seemed like they were like, oh, they're just going to be sleeping all day, so we'll give up the bed. They won't be engaging in anything. Yeah, I don't waste the bed on someone who's just going to be sleeping. Like, I would rather have someone in here who's going to do therapy. Great. But they will end their lives. Like, yeah. Do you want that on your record, psychiatrist? But yeah, maybe that's a bit more of a reflection of the American healthcare system as well.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it gets a shoe in.
Yeah. The only bit where it's accurate about America.
I mean, having said that though, I've people I know who have been hospitalised have found it really hard to get really good treatment that works for them in Australia as well. But at least you don't have to be rich and have a huge debt on your head to access it.
Yeah, not as much as America. Like, obviously still psychiatry costs, psychology costs.
Super expensive, yeah.
It's expensive to be ill. Like, it costs a lot. I reckon I'd have a Range Rover if I didn't have bipolar. The amount of doctors I've seen, the therapy, the medication, the blood tests, and the time.
Yeah, it's not just the cost in dollars, it's also the time spent attending all the appointments and checkups, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And the time out of work to do that too. It is like a little part-time job being this ill with a complex illness, yeah.
What did you think about in the film how each of the parents sort of went through their journey with Carla and Marco and how that was depicted?
It shows that there is that, you know, they want to support them, but it also shows that these parents have no fucking idea how.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly accurate.
I thought that.
I know that I've had many conversations with my mum saying, like, I can't believe I would text you and tell you that I was killing myself. And what were you able to do? And she's like, nothing. There was nothing I could do but be there and help you. There's nothing else. Like, what do you do? I was doing everything right. Like, these people, they're you know, they were seeing therapists. They were trying to take medication. You know, they're on paper doing everything right, but they're still having these problems. So
yeah.
And then it does get tiring for people around someone with bipolar, because the person with bipolar doesn't stop. Like, they don't just pause and then just, like, chill and then go back to it. Like, it's just constant,
yeah.
So these parents are exhausted. They're not told how to manage this, and you can just see it in their reactions. Like, they're desperately wanting to help, but they're like, I don't know what to do.
I feel like they do as best a job they can too. I think they really try hard. You can see that they really love their kids and just want them to be well.
Yeah.
Even though they're tired, and you can see that they've gone through it a lot. You can tell.
The patience is amazing.
And I think they're really calm too. Like, I've been that hysterical with my parents when Katie Holmes is freaking out at her mum's house. And my mum has not been that calm. I don't know if that's accurate. No offense, Mum, I love you. But yeah, like, you can really see that they are trying every little trick they have in the book with the amount of energy that they have.
Yeah, exactly. And you've only got so much energy for so long, right? So they would be exhausted. They're out of ideas. They've tried every trick in the book. Like, what else? What else can they do? So I really love how the parents are seen in this.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they were really well acted.
It would be confronting as a parent too to go to your son, like your child's house, and to see the state that they're living in.
Oh my God, yeah.
The level of concern you would have. Would just be astronomical. So he does really well in trying to keep Marco a little bit more calmer as he's trying to, like, you know, ruffle through everything. But yeah, you can see the dad's like, come on, what do you need? What do you
just come over and hang out with me for a bit.
Yeah.
And the sort of backstory with his mum, which maybe she had bipolar as well, it's kind of alluded to, and Marco sort of brings her up quite a bit and says, you know, you made her go, or whatever it was. Like, that would have been really hard for his dad to not take personally, but he seems to just ignore it, keep going.
I think, and that would be something that has come with time. Because I'm sure that's not the first time he would have mentioned it. Like, if that was real life, it would be this reoccurring argument that you pushed her away, you know. But it is, like, bipolar is genetic anyway, so it does make sense. Like, his mum had bipolar or has bipolar.
So we might just talk about the section of our podcast called Stereotypes. So I didn't find too many stereotypes in this film that we usually see in movies about mental illness, but did you pick up on any that you thought were possibly problematic, or not necessarily problematic but still a stereotype?
Nothing that I've walked away and gone, oh, for fuck's sake, like, are you kidding? Yeah. Did you just get that out of a textbook? You know, when you can really see that they've just Googled what it's like to have an illness. There was nothing, like, cringeworthy like that for me in this. It was, there was nothing like it.
I think the only thing that I thought could be seen that way was in their depressive episodes, how everything's black and it's very bleak, but at the same time, that's kind of what it can be like when you're depressed. But it is very, like, the colour is now black.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly on the nose, but also I liked it at the same time.
Well, I mean, if you have, like, you know, major depression, it, I guess on like a level, say you've got major depression, it's a 7 or 8, you know, and it just cruises along, and it's just always there, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets really bad for people, and they you know, they go and they have their lows, like someone might call it. But then to have bipolar and major depression, it's times 100. So things are all black.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, like my eyesight drops when I'm feeling low. My sense of smell changes, my taste buds change. So it actually changes so much.
So much of your sensory world as a whole.
Yeah. So the fact that it's actually gone black really, to me anyway, shows that they know the illness.
That's really good to know, because I'm sure some people watching it might not realise that's how bleak it can be. I did think there's sort of, it plays with the stereotype a little bit of the sort of crazy artist, or quote unquote crazy artist. What do you think about that sort of? Because that's sort of talked about quite a bit, of wanting to harness the mania to create, and so many of these artists that have bipolar or are alluded to it because they were so far in the past, and that being, like, I guess a positive thing about mental illness. What were your thoughts?
Look, I somehow got skipped with the creative genius in me. For fuck's sake.
Maybe you just haven't found your gift yet. Maybe it's there.
I've looked. I joined a PR degree. Like I signed up to a uni course when I didn't even own a laptop. An online uni course when I didn't own a laptop. So, like, you know, I've tried to be creative, but yeah, and the references is a lot to Van Gogh and other people who are extremely creative. And, you know, Carla's a poet and he's a rapper, and they're really into that art. That is one stereotype that I have found, because I can't do shit with art.
And that's what I struggle with, this stereotype, because yes, it is true that some people with bipolar have these gifts, but what about all the people that don't have these gifts and then see this played out a lot in film and go, oh, well, I guess I'm not as cool as those. I don't have that special extra bonus with my mental illness, so am I less of a person, or am I not valuable enough to society, etc.?
Yeah, and on that, like, because it's so well known, you put together bipolar and creativity, a lot of the times you even look up, you know, bipolar and what it's like, and so much is referenced creativity. For a while I was thinking, oh, well, I'm not bipolar because I don't have bipolar because I'm not creative. And it's just so, it's like,
it's a very good example of one of those really, like, tropey stigmas that society has created.
Yeah, 100%. It's such a stigma, like a stereotype of it. But yeah, until you actually dive a bit deeper, you're like, oh, okay, not everyone is creative. Like, that is just a stereotype. So if you don't have that, it doesn't change anything about your illness or about you, or you're not stupid, or, you know, whatever you're thinking, you just don't have it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't know if it's a stereotype, because it hasn't really been depicted much in film, but the sense that people with the same mental illness can't be in a relationship together, that's, like, I guess a message that could be gained from it, which could be seen as not a very helpful or positive message. What are your thoughts on that?
If you both have bipolar and it's well managed, like with your medication and therapy, then, you know, you'd be fine. But if it isn't, if you are both like this couple where the mood swings are so erratic, like, I don't know, I couldn't. Because you would just be bouncing off each other, like we said. So, yeah, in that sense, because of how unwell they are, it makes sense that they can't be. But generally, I mean, name one person who doesn't have anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't met one yet.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone says that they've got depression too. So, you know, everyone is married or dating someone with a mental illness, and everyone has a mental illness. So no, I don't think that's correct. It's just how well it's managed in your relationship and individually.
For sure. And I think that extends to just relationships in general, because we're all going to have ups and downs. It's how you manage those things and work through them together.
Yeah, like I don't have a best friend with bipolar because I think that would be a fucking wild time.
Oh, one last thing I wanted to touch on in terms of stereotypes, and something we come up a lot in this podcast, is aggression or violence in mental illness. And it doesn't come up too much in this film, but it does come up. Like when they're in the institution and they get separated and there's a little bit of aggression there, and then they get pretty aggressively separated and strapped down into the isolation rooms.
America.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that probably does happen in Australia at times. And I know Michael and Megan's mum is a mental health nurse, so I know that she's had to take down patients before, but probably a bit more aggressive than they were. It often comes up in mental illness that there's aggression there, when we know that people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators. But I did do a little bit of research, and there is higher risk of people with bipolar disorder showing greater episodes of aggression. But I think that what aggression is can be very broad term as well. And I never think it's a good idea in terms of smashing this stigma to show a person with mental illness getting aggressive in a film, because it's just like, oh, here we go again. What did you think? Did that come up for you at all?
No, like the aggression you can see is just their passion about wanting to be together, and and I think that their aggression is actually their fear coming out, the fear of not being together, because they're their safety nets. Like lived experience with that, I am the least aggressive person ever, but I do get agitated. So to the point where if someone is breathing near me when I'm agitated, I feel like my whole body is like really terribly sunburnt, and someone is just scratching the sunburn. Like my whole body goes into pain from them, and I just like feel this rage. You know, it doesn't come across as aggression, but it does come across as really snappy. Because fuck. But definitely not aggressive like this. But then again, I'm not an aggressive person generally. So maybe someone else would. I just cried everything.
Which is less aggressive, but also...
Don't love it, but yeah, I'd rather that. I think, you know, a cis white man with a bit of rum in his stomach is far more aggressive than anyone with mental illness. But
absolutely agree. And yeah, the research that I looked up did say that because of that increased agitation during that mania and irritability, then anger and rage can follow, which might lead to higher risk of aggression. So it does make, you know, logical sense that there would be some more increased episodes of anger or aggression, but it's not necessarily the case with everybody with bipolar. Like you say, there might be that predisposition to getting aggressive.
And I think it's more so you want to harm yourself. You don't want to harm another person.
That's an interesting point, because research I was looking up for, I can't remember which other film it was, but they termed aggression as, like, one of the terms within aggression was self-harm in the study that they did. And, like, that's a different ballgame than being physically aggressive to somebody else.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of times I've just punched myself in the head. Never in a million years would I hurt someone else, but I couldn't stop hitting myself. And I would never even think to, like, put my hand on someone else and hurt them. But the aggression is just at myself. So it's you just hurt yourself. There's probably fucking Silver fucking List, whatever their stupid name is. Because he's super aggressive in that Silver.
Yeah, he definitely is. I can't remember when he's ever aggressive to himself.
He's not. He's just aggressive to everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we just need to, even if there is some evidence of it, like, let's just stop showing that and show something that's a bit more realistic and concerning, because
the percentage of actual people with the aggression is so small. Like, it doesn't need to be, it's fucking annoying, but yeah.
It's always overblown.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I kind of want to go to what we thought could possibly be harmful in this movie, because I don't see much that's harmful about this movie. Did you find anything could be construed as harmful?
No. Like, everything is really spot on, even to the point where Marco doesn't want to take his medication. Again, spot on.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to watch this on medication, then watch this film and then go, I want to stop my medication because, you know, or like in their head like that way. No one's going to do that.
I definitely agree, compared to Silver Linings, where the message is like, just fall in love. You can throw your meds away. It's fine.
Fuck off.
Yeah, it was kind of the opposite message in this movie.
Yeah. And even though they are together and the whole, you know, the movie's about their relationship, it's still about them working on themselves as individuals.
Absolutely, yeah. I really like that about it.
Yeah, so if it was only or even more so directed at them as a couple, then I'd be like, okay, that's a bit harmful. But it was actually, they are still individuals in a relationship, and how do they help each other and themselves to be together? Like,
yeah.
So I thought that was really beautiful how they've done that. And there is hope in it, in that she's doing really well.
Yeah. And he seems to be doing a bit, like, they were able to come together. I think that was really hopeful. They were able to come together and read that book together, even though they went through such an intense relationships, which didn't end particularly well. The fact they were able to do that and collaborate was, like, pretty powerful to me.
Tears!
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Like, they were very different, and you could see that difference all the way through. Like, he really wanted to harness that mania, and she really wanted to just sort of be stable, and that the way they're both kind of grappling with that need and working through that by themselves as well.
Yeah, and then also I'm trying to understand where the other person's point of view is coming from. Like, why would you try to hold on to the mania? Why aren't you trying to get better?
Yeah.
But the mania is addictive.
Yeah, and I can see his point too. Like, he doesn't want their kid to be, just another kid, and also, wants to hide. The fact that they went into the forest to, like, raise their baby together because society won't want them. Like, that's fair call. Like, the way society is, I can see his point in that. But I can also see her point as well.
Yeah, like, and telling the parents, you didn't want us together. We met in a mental hospital and now he's made a baby. Like,
yeah.
When you say that loud, you're like, wow, that's a combination. But yeah, I can see why they did try to run away and think that was better, because they would have been just ridiculed.
For sure, yeah. I think maybe people could get the message that parents with bipolar might not be fit to raise a child. The fact that she did end up going through with the abortion. Like, I'm sure there's kids out there with both parents with bipolar that might be like, oh, I'm here. I'm happy I'm here, or people with bipolar that want to start a family might see this movie and go, oh, shit, that's not a very good message for us. But I can also made sense in the film at the same time.
Yeah, so I think the timing of the abortion was key, because it was when he pushed her and showed that aggression and showed that, I think it would have been like a bit of a trigger for her to go, okay, we're not in a stable place.
Yeah.
So we're not fit
this isn't
right
a good time
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby. And so she's making a really rational decision.
Exactly. And you can see that she's in a rational place before she makes that decision as well.
Stable and rational when she makes that. And I think she's absolutely made the best decision for her and this unborn child. But I know myself, like, I've cried many times to Chris saying, if I give our child bipolar, I will never forgive myself. Because the guilt will... So if I have to go through what my parents went through with me, oh my God. But then Chris says, but you'd be the best help. If they have a mental illness, like, you will pick it up straight away. And
you'll get it, and you'll be able to support in the most individual way that they'll need.
Yeah, so I guess, I think if their abortion scene was, I guess, when they were going really well, that would have been... But I think the critical timing of it was perfect.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just one last point. How did you find, without, and be as comfortable with this as you like, the depiction of the suicide attempt, did you think that was a responsible, okay depiction? It wasn't too glamorizing or too much?
It is such a fine line of you have to glamorize it to some degree because it's such a triggering and confronting thing to happen.
Yeah, you can't make it too real because that's not good. Yeah.
And it's an indie film. It's not CSI in Miami. So, yeah, they had to do something, but good on them for still showing it.
Yeah, I think that was key. I think they needed to show how dark it can get to make this a good depiction. Yeah.
And then, and they needed to show the both sides. Like, they did show the mania to its extreme with, I'm not from here, I'm from the space. Like, that is real. That's 100% in his mind. That is where he's from. And then, the suicide attempts, like, it's all real. It's all really valid.
I thought it was done pretty tastefully without being too in your face, because it didn't have, pretty music or, it just looked bleak. And luckily I feel like it was done quick enough that we didn't linger on it for too long. Yeah. And then you could see them, a few minutes later, they're sort of doing okay again. So it's like, okay, everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So So they didn't dwell on that for too long, but I'm glad that they did put it in.
Yeah, same. I might just finish off with just a few bits of information about how helpful this movie was for advocacy groups. Apparently, the National Alliance on Mental Illness screened it, and Paul Dalio said that lots of organisations got behind them and wanted to use the film to show the depiction of bipolar, and they did not get one negative response from a doctor or patient or family member. Everyone said this is exactly what it was like for me. Yeah, so it got a really good, it was critically praised from the community, but unfortunately there's less information about how well it was received about this movie than like Silver Linings Playbook, because it didn't win an Oscar. So yeah, it obviously your love for the movie and my love for the movie is shared by the bipolar community, which is really good.
I didn't know that. So that's just made my heart feel so warm and fuzzy that every single person who, doctor or patient or family member, like to hear that is just beautiful.
It must have been so nice for Paul too to feel like, oh yes, I did it.
I really spoke to the illness. Like, he's just nailed it. And yeah,
and you can see himself in it, I think. Oh, and he's actually in it. Did you realize? He's a patient in the institution. He comes and gets his medication.
Oh my God. So he did like a Stan Lee movement where like
he's
in his own movie.
It's like a little cameo, which is really cute.
You gotta make a movie. Fucking be in it.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I don't know what he's up to now. Hopefully he does some more stuff, because if he does more things like this, and now that he's put himself sort of on the map and, a lot of people liked what he did, hopefully, the next thing he does has more attention.
Hopefully. I would love that, because he's obviously very good with mental illness movies. But I would love for this to be as well known as Tully and Silver, whatever. I've got to stop talking about so people start Googling it soon. Can't plug it anymore.
Is there any last things you want to say about it?
Oh, I just want everyone to watch it. I want anyone who has a loved one with bipolar, anyone who has bipolar or thinks they have it or thinks their loved one has it, it's just such a touching movie. And it does show you that everything you feel is valid. And with bipolar, I feel, for me anyway, that's the biggest thing, is your emotions are valid. And you're seen and you feel heard in this movie. And that's huge. That's for such a complex mental illness and such a, one field with so much stigma, to have a whole movie, an accurate movie about it, is just fucking phenomenal.
Totally. That's such a lovely message, and I think it shows what the power of film can be if it's done right. Movies bring so many things to the surface and to light and connect people. So seeing a movie that actually does it well is like, a breath of fresh air. And like, I don't even have to do the final scores because I think it meets all the criteria for everything. And we've never had that before.
Really?
So, no, yeah, never.
I can tell why you wouldn't have had that in the Joker. Fuck, I know. But yeah, that's amazing. Honestly, yeah, I it's perfection to me.
Amazing. Well, Jossie, before we finish up, is there anything you want to recommend or plug or tell our audience to do besides watch this movie?
Just in case you haven't thought of it, you should absolutely watch this film.
Don't know how though. We'll find out. We'll find out a way.
I've got the DVD. It's still in the wrapper. If you guys
Jossie will send it to you.
have a DVD player, I will fucking send it to you. I will plug the organisation that I work for because I strongly believe in all the work that we do. So I work for Lysn Psychology. So the website is www.welysn.com and it's LYSN. We offer bulk billing psychology through Medicare, and it's all via online. So it's via video chat or over the phone. So you can be at home in your comfort zone, in your safe place.
Is that Australia-wide or?
Yeah, it's Australia-wide.
Oh, that's fantastic.
They don't have the huge wait list. Like I've been able to get people in. Today I got someone in the same day to see someone or the day after. Like, it's just incredible.
Oh, that's amazing. Given how backed up everything is at the moment, that's such good to hear. And because I have thousands of listeners, hopefully after releasing this episode, you don't get inundated and have a huge wait list.
I want to help everyone.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, Jossie. This has been awesome. And I will definitely hit you up if there's something else we should do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you for asking me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's a true honour to come on to talk about this, and I know I could talk all day and night about mental health, so I'm really stoked. So thank you.
Well, hopefully it will be our first conversation of more. So
I fucking hope it will.
We can talk more about mental health because I love talking about it as well.
Great.
Clearly. I made a podcast about it.
Thanks again for listening to Psychocinematic Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, add us on Instagram, and join our Facebook page, TikTok, Twitter, all of the things. Thanks very much for listening.